what hurts the most when I don't have it and feels the best when I do. All right. So you can get distracted by a myriad of things. I don't know. It could be workers' comp insurance, right? As a small business owner, you're all over the place. You've got all these things that you have to handle. But for me, and even to this day, it's not like you ever get rid of these distractions, right? You have to ask yourself again, what hurts the most when I don't have it and feels the best when I do? And for me, it's two things in this industry. It's new caregivers and new clients.
You're listening to Home Care Hindsight, the podcast where we talk with home care leaders about the big mistakes they've made and the even bigger lessons they've learned along the way. I'm David Knack, head of sales here at Zingage, and I've built a career on the idea that we learn a whole lot more from our mistakes than from our successes, which is great because I've made a lot of mistakes. I've gotten to know some of the leaders in this industry who've built amazing businesses and are super well respected. So I thought it'd be fun, instead of asking them about the great things they've accomplished, to have them tell the story of one of the biggest mistakes that they've made and how that mistake changed their thinking and the way they run their business. All right, welcome back to another episode of Home Care Hindsight from Zingage, the leading caregiver engagement platform. I've got with me today Matt Thompson from Visiting Angels. Matt, welcome to the show.
Hey, everybody. Hey, David.
Well, for people who aren't familiar with you, introduce yourself.
Yeah, sure. So Matt Thompson, born and raised in Wisconsin, beautiful Wisconsin. We've been in the industry, the home care industry, for about 10 years now. I've got the scars on my back to prove it. It's been a fun ride. Visiting Angels franchise owner, but you know what? I'm sure whatever we discuss in this podcast is applicable to any agency owner. You can put Butt Wipers LLC above the door.
Yeah.
And, Visiting Angels, whatever the name of the company is. But yeah, that's a little bit about who I am professionally,
Yeah.
Mr. David.
Well, good. Well, I always like having people on the show who are building a business in the space, who are currently in an operating role. You're really close to the day-to-day of this, but I also like having people on who happen to be customers of ours. And so you guys have been using Zingage for probably around 6 months now?
Yeah, exactly.
And would love to hear a little bit about what kind of made you go down this pathway, and then what you're trying to address within your org, and a little bit about the results that you've seen.
Sure. Yeah, would love to. So after getting into this industry and starting this business, we saw that a rewards program for caregivers was a cool idea, and it just makes sense, right? We experimented with things over the years, and essentially it either got too complicated or it got to the point where it wasn't motivating. Like, I don't want to have to hire a full-time person to just run a rewards program, right? So, I mean, philosophically, it makes sense. You want your caregivers, your employees to be engaged. You want them to be motivated to do their job and to do it at a high level. So yeah, we tried and failed a few programs, Angels Get Their Wings, playing off the Visiting Angels. And we actually do something similar now with Zingage, but Zingage, we were able to incorporate it right into our software, our scheduling software.
Yep.
Easy. Tracks everything for us. Easy. I can award points at the click of a button. It's not so complicated that it's not motivating, right?
Yeah.
So caregivers, it's easy for them to understand. They've even come from professions where there were point systems, right? So they get it. So, as a small business owner, you want something that's the biggest bang for your buck, and it's easy to manage, and you're getting a lot out of it. So I really so the point system in and of itself is awesome, and it's helped us. Caregiver retention. It also helps us with our office staff, keeping them engaged.
Sure.
Right? They're excited about it. They can earn points. They're talking about the points with caregivers. If they're being asked to fill shifts, and I think one of the biggest challenges in this industry is that scheduling bit, right? That's the most stressful, most amount of work. And now you're giving them essentially another tool to accomplish their job, right? We got angel points for you, or monitoring this, keeping that morale high, right? Keep that momentum going. So it helps with that. But it's not just the points system, if you will. I love the surveys too. There's other survey platforms out there, but to have it self-contained in our scheduling system where I can develop personalized surveys, recurring surveys for people who are new hires that are after 1 month. Hey, the 90-day turnover rate in this industry is awful.
Yeah.
Let's try to keep them engaged. Let's see what they like, what they don't like. Because if there's a problem that I don't know about, forget it. How can I solve a problem that I don't know about? So
Sure.
I'd much rather hear about problems than not hear about problems,
Yeah.
right? So that survey it was an unintended consequence. It's not the reason we got Zingage, but it's like, oh, here's a free add-on. Like,
Yeah.
oh, awesome. And then I'm really liking what I'm seeing that's coming down the road from
Yeah.
Zingage, like integrating AI into preventing call outs or
Yeah.
to filling call outs. I don't know all of the details, but I like I like the way it sounds and I'm excited about it. So I'd say it would be those three pillars, I guess, so far. The point system, the surveys, and then the eventual integration of making us even more efficient with AI.
Yeah. I think one of the things that you hit on is the lift that this has been for your schedulers. And I love giving our office staff additional resources to do their jobs better because they've got a difficult job to make the logistics of home care make sense. And kind of adjacent, one of the things that I've heard from other customers of ours is the caregiver who calls in to the office and says, "Can you clock me in?" It's so much friction and it's just such like a almost overreaction to say, no, you have to clock yourself in. Like you're just going to
Sure.
frustrate that person
Right.
and just it's nobody wants to be that guy. And
No.
one of the things that we've had people report to us is, my office staff loves that this is a way that they can incentivize the right kinds of activity from caregivers without being the bad guy who says, no, you have to clock in on Well Sky or whatever. Instead, they can say, hey, I can totally clock you in, but I don't want you to miss out on your points. And that's a really powerful way to kind of pattern interrupt that activity that creates a huge amount of administrative burden for the office and instead direct that caregiver into the right kinds of habits that are good for them, but also good for the office.
It's the carrot as opposed to the stick,
Yeah. The stick
right?
doesn't work in home care.
No, it doesn't. And that reminds me there's a child psychologist that he had a TED Talk or something, and he had all these penguins up in his room. And every time he'd meet with the family of the child, they'd ask, well, why are there all these penguins in your room? He
Yeah.
said, well, at SeaWorld or training penguins, you get them to do what you want them to do by reinforcing good behavior.
Yep.
And that's how humans are wired too. Like very rarely does negative feedback help correct it, but instead of focusing on the negative, let's reward the positive,
Yep.
right? And that's very much what Zengage does.
Yep, exactly right. Well, very well said. I want to transition into a part of the show that I call What Kind of Person Are You? Where I ask somebody a question because I just want to get through all the small talk and get right to, who are you and what do you care about? And
I
so,
love this small
uh,
talk, man. I love it. This whole thing could be small talk. What are you talking about?
yeah, we could do just a whole episode of small talk, see how the
Because people are
reviews
more
are.
interested in us than Zengage. Let's be honest. We're two
That's true.
amazing people, David.
That's exactly right. Yeah, we're going to drag this product along behind us, right? They people just want to talk to me. That's why people are
Yeah,
buying Zingage. No,
it's all
that's
about
probably
you.
not right.
It's
No,
all about you.
probably not. Well, in order to ask you what kind of person are you, tell me a little bit about the kind of original career trajectory that you had for your life.
Sure. Yeah. So, I wanted to teach English as a second language. So I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and I lived out upstate New York for a little while, and I saw the different reaction in the Spanish field than
Hmm.
in the English field.
Sure.
And so I thought, man, I want to learn Spanish. And so I started learning Spanish, and it opened up my mind to the world and to cultures. And so I got my degree in teaching English as a second language. And the goal was to, somebody from China does business with somebody from Japan, they speak English, right? So
Yeah.
everybody wants to learn to speak English. And so I was able to travel a little bit, Africa, South America, a little bit in Asia. But it wasn't really paying the bills and I wanted to settle down a little bit. So I came back to the US and worked in the audiological field for about 10 years. So hearing aids and hearing
Yeah.
tests. But then this opportunity came through about 10 years ago and here we are.
Very cool. Well, Matt, as you know, I bring people on this show who are accomplished and have growing businesses and have done a lot of stuff right. And we don't really talk about any of that. Instead, we talk about the big mistake that they've made and the way that it changes the way that they think about their business. So, Matt,
Sure.
what's your big mistake?
Yeah. So distractions, getting distracted. It's so easy. A business is a living, breathing thing. It's complicated, right? And I think at the end of the day, you have to ask yourself, what hurts the most when I don't have it and feels the best when I do? All right. So you can get distracted by a myriad of things. I don't know. It could be workers' comp insurance, right? As a small business owner, you're all over the place. You've got all these things that you have to handle. For me, and even to this day, it's not like you ever get rid of these distractions, right? You have to ask yourself again, what hurts the most when I don't have it and feels the best when I do? And for me, it's two things in this industry. There's two buttons that we're pressing every day. It's new caregivers and new clients, right? So it's caregiver acquisition and client acquisition. And so you have to ask yourself, whatever you're doing, how does this help me with those two buttons? And that kind of directs you and focuses you on what's the most important that I'm doing each day.
Yeah. I think there's like one of the things that you alluded to here is there's so many different things that a business owner can do. I mean, insurance and taxes and, your financial performance and analytics and all these kinds of things that are good things to do and can make an
Mhm.
impact on the business. They can save the business money, they can, reduce risk, all that kind of stuff. But I think one of the things that probably everybody can relate to is getting like 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks down the road and like looking up from the tasks that you've been working on and realizing like those two buttons haven't gotten pushed
Right?
nearly as often as they need to, nearly as recently. And so can you think of a specific time where you like got your head out of the piles of paperwork on your desk and you were like, "Oh no, those buttons were completely neglected for a minute."
Yeah, I think, okay, I'll give you more of a general example about emails. Like
Yeah,
when did anything great ever get accomplished via email? The answer is never. Like if I'm writing this 3-page long email to a fellow employee or staff member trying to create this culture of pushing the buttons, more caregivers, more clients, then I'm missing the boat. Then I'm
yeah,
like, just pick up the phone and
yep,
talk. Or I think another example would be taking an anecdotal story and then making all these business decisions based on that, as opposed to just gathering the facts,
hmm,
right? Kind of getting distracted by emotions.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think it's easy to get pulled into the day to day and to put out fires and like you're in home care. Like there's a lot of fires in home care. And so what are the practical things that you do that help you to measure and to know whether or not you're focused on the two main things?
Great. I love it. Okay, so in order for you to be focused on the two most important things, like what does that look like? What does that sound like? Well, I need to make sure that every single member of my team, my office team, is focused
Mm,
on that, right? So how do I accomplish that? Well, one thing that we do is at the end of every day, every employee has an end of day report.
mm,
Okay. So based on their assigned role, we have to determine, okay, which buttons are they pressing here? Right. So if it's my person that's answering the phones for prospects, I want to ask them, hey, at the end of the day, I want to know how many private pay assessments have you set?
sure.
So if they know at the end of the day that they're going to be held accountable to that,
Yep.
like I'm going to have to answer for that. The fact that they have to report it makes them focused on it. All right. This is the point of my job. Like they could be distracted by all these other things, right? Number of phone calls, and you could break it down to the insane level, right? But hey, at the end of the day, your job is to schedule private pay assessments. How
Yep.
many did you set? That's that one metric. So by me asking others to be accountable to that clear-minded vision, right, and coaching them on that, and the messaging that I'm constantly giving them, I'm hearing my messaging, and that
Yeah.
helps me to be focused, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's good. As you think about, your office staff, those end of day reports, the kind of metrics that they're being held accountable to, holding themselves accountable to, um, is it a good idea for anybody on your staff to have to press both buttons?
Yeah, it's a great question. You want them to stay in their lane. In a perfect world, if your business is big enough, you want one person assigned to one job.
Yeah,
But the fact of the matter is depending on the size of our company, you may be the only person doing that,
yeah,
right? Or until you get to that, your goal is to get to that point where I only want them pressing this one button. That's the goal. But until you get there, you may have to spread that out,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that makes a lot of sense. I think everybody's goal is to have somebody who their job is new caregivers. But
Right.
and I think this is probably more common with the folks whose job is to get new clients. Is a potential applicant may call in to the office and end up talking to the person whose job is new client acquisitions and to set those private pay assessments. And I think the way that they represent the brand to that individual is so important. They've got to understand, and I think this goes back to some stuff that we'll talk about later around the leadership piece of how you set the culture in your office. But it's not a not my job situation. Like everybody's got to be able to pick up the phone and do that initial client intake. Everybody's got
Right.
to be able to have a conversation about why somebody should want to work with visiting angels. That's got to be across the board. But then I think also that ability to specialize and focus helps people to perform at their best.
100%. Yeah. So you want people believing in the overall people do business for you and do business with you because you have the same belief.
Yeah.
And so if everybody understands that those are the two buttons, if everybody has that common goal, yes, you can accomplish it, but people are going to perform at a higher level if they have that one designated job title, if you will,
Yeah.
or one button to press for
Yeah.
sure.
I love this idea too of end of day report. And so let's take your your person responsible for new client acquisition. What's like the format, the structure of that end of day report that they send out about the private pay assessments?
Perfect. I'll give you two examples. So we have a marketer whose job is to generate new clients,
Yep.
right? Okay. So the end of day report that I have for them is how many prospects were generated today
Yep.
and how many new clients were generated today. That's it.
Yep.
They don't want to see zeros, right? So
Yep.
so I could break it down even more into the behavior and say, hey, in order to get these clients, you have to make this number of visits, you have to do this number of in-services, and that's fine to me as far as a weekly meeting is concerned.
Sure.
But a daily target is every day I want to be able to ask myself, how many new prospects did I generate and how many new clients did I generate? So
Yep.
that would be like the marketer, for example. We also have what we call a client care navigator.
Yeah.
That marketer can't be answering the phone while they're doing their marketing visits necessarily. So I have a full-time person dedicated to just getting referrals and prospect calls.
Yep.
Okay. At the end of the day, they are simply reporting how many private pay assessments did I set today,
Yep.
right? And then how many total new prospects did I create today? So whether
Sure.
that's referrals, whether it's that's a phone call, web lead, whatever, right? So again, it's just laser focused. That client care navigator, they're trying to schedule private pay assessments,
Yep.
and they're tracking how many new potential prospects we have
Yeah.
each day.
I, one other thing that I mean is should be clear, but is worth calling out explicitly is you're not focused on how many new clients did you get today. Like you're focused on the inputs to that
Right,
funnel that reliably lead to new
right,
clients.
exactly. Yeah, there's some things you can't control, right? And there's different tiers of growth here. Okay, so for my marketer, yes, I'm having them record the new clients today. I get that. I'm tracking that, but the buttons that I'm pushing lead to that,
Yep.
right? So, oh, it's another zero today, zero new clients. Okay, and I get it, and that hurts, and I want that to hurt. If that hurts, that's a good thing.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? But I don't want it to be hurt so much that it's discouraged and why even try. So if I didn't generate any new clients well, let's work our way backward. How many new prospects did we generate today? Okay, zero. Okay, how many referral source visits did you make today? Oh,
Yep.
okay. So now I only had two. All right, we've got to get that up. Now we talk about what's the conversation you're having with each referral source.
Yep.
right? So yeah, the behavior determines the results,
Yep.
right? Yeah.
Yep. Exactly right. Okay, I want to transition to talking about something that is totally overrated in the industry. So, what's something that you think generally people overvalue and it's not nearly as
Okay.
good as it's cracked up to be?
I have 2 million caregivers. I have 1,000 caregivers. Great, that's fine. Cool. How many hours does each caregiver want? The number of caregivers is just, it's a random number. And I'll go to the extreme, right? I've got 200 caregivers, but each caregiver wants an hour a week. Fantastic, right? So it's the hours, the total hours that your caregivers want is the magic number, in my opinion,
Yeah.
right? Because now you're given your business potential, right? Okay, so now I have 10 caregivers. They each want, or on average, they want 20 hours a week. Okay, that's 200 hours. That's what my goal is now, is I want to schedule 200 hours
Yep.
because that's my potential. So I think a lot of times that gets lost in the numbers of, I don't know why necessarily. Maybe it's just like business owners talking to other business owners and flexing and this, whatever. This is the number that I want. I need to get to this number of caregivers. No, the question is how many hours do I want to do with business a week to be
Yep.
profitable, to make that? Now I'm going to work my way backward. If my average caregiver works this number of hours, now I need this number of caregivers,
Yeah.
right? And so if you start with that end goal of hours and then hours per caregiver, then it's just a matter of training your team to have these conversations with your caregivers,
Yeah.
because caregivers don't even know how many hours they want to work a
Sure.
week.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, they might just say a number because they think that's what you want to hear,
Yep. Exactly right.
right? So let's find out. Like, why did you say 20, Mr. and Mrs. Caregiver? What is it? I don't know. Well, like, how much money do you want to make a week? Can we
Yeah.
start with that? Right. And now you're having that in-depth conversation that is purely, hey, I want to make you happy. Tell me what I need to do to make you happy.
Yep.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's kind of two pieces here, right? One is they're often they're saying what they've become conditioned to think is possible. Oh, 25 hours a week
Right.
would be great, right? Or
Right.
40.
Yep.
I want to work 40 hours a week.
Sure.
That may or may not be the real story, and it may be the case that this person is already working 10 hours at agency A and 15 hours at agency B, and so they come to you and they say, "Well, I want 15 hours with you because that'll get me to 40." But I think most caregivers and most businesses would love to have caregivers who work 40 hours a week and are super reliable and
Absolutely.
never call out.
Well, yeah.
Instead of being in position number 3 in order of priority,
Right.
you're my you're not my employer of choice. You're not my primary employer.
Right.
You're the person I go to when I need to kind of fill in some gaps in my schedule.
And that's a great example, David. So if you're talking about desired hours, and you know what, as great as our job interviewers or recruiters might do, they're not going to uncover
Sure.
everything,
Yeah.
right? And so if we dig deep and say, why is it 15? Well, I'm working for XYZ, XY. Oh, interesting. Then the next question I'm going to ask is, what would it take for us to get you full time?
Yeah.
Right. But having that desired hours conversation and finding out the why
Yep.
at least gets you to that point.
Yeah.
Right.
I think the other end of this, I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, we had this situation where a caregiver of ours worked, and we accidentally scheduled them too much, and they made like $200 too many for where they're at in terms of kind of their like benefits from the federal government and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And there's a whole political conversation that could be had, but I don't do that on my podcast. And instead, the reality is there are caregivers who have to track how much money that they're making so that they don't go over and have a net loss in their income,
Yep.
and then they're in a pickle. And so I think that's the other reason of understanding desired hours from the caregivers and not just putting in 40, because if somebody ends up working too much, they could be in a situation where you've made their life a lot harder. From a retention perspective, you are unlikely to keep that employee in the way that you need to, because you're the reason that they just lost a whole bunch of benefits and whatnot.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah, that's another fringe benefit of finding out how many do you want and why.
Yeah. Yep. the why behind. And I think so often what you get in the interview process is rapport answers, right? I'm going to say whatever answer you need to
Right.
hear in order for me to get this
I'm
job.
going to say 40 because I know they're going to want me to say 40.
Yeah.
And now we're offering 40. They're constantly saying no. And now there's just this disconnect. Like,
Yep.
why are they constantly offering me all these hours? I don't want the hours.
Why am I offering you all these hours and you're never picking them up? They're
Exactly.
inside of your, it's such a mess. And stuff changes rapidly with caregivers. Transportation has changed,
Exactly.
childcare has changed, where they live has changed. And
Yep.
so if you're not keeping in touch with your caregivers, you're risking, you know, being out of sync with how many hours they want and what their schedule's like and all those sorts of things.
Exactly. Yep.
All right, let's move to, we talked about a big mistake that you've made, but what's a little mistake that you see home care owners make all the time that if they quit, it'd make their lives or their businesses like 10 times better?
Yeah. So it's I alluded to this before, but it's like making business decisions based on anecdotal evidence.
Yeah,
And I'm going to use the surveys as an example. Okay. You could be using the Zingage survey and asking your caregivers, like, how can we create a better experience for you at Visiting Angels or at our company? And they say, I can never get a hold of somebody at the office.
yeah,
You never get, okay, great. So now you're thinking, man, I got to hire more people to answer the phones,
yep,
right? I got to change all this. Well, let's look at the facts first. And this
yeah,
happened to us. Okay. I think we were chronically hearing that for years, and we thought it was just a manpower issue. We recently went to a VoIP, a new
yeah,
VoIP system, and I got the facts, and we are answering 75 to 80% of our calls live. I love that number.
yeah,
To me, that said, I want it to be 100%. That'd be great. I don't know
yeah,
if that's possible, but I'm happy with 70, 80%. So now that tells me, oh, I don't have to hire more staff,
yeah,
right? But then this forces me to have that conversation. Well, what is my goal? And if 75 to 80% is my goal, but I'm still getting these complaints, some of these people, right now, that just gives me a whole platform upon which to work. I might say, all right, maybe these caregivers are just complainers.
yeah, sure.
They're just going to, it doesn't matter. And I take that into account, but then I also think about setting realistic expectations. What
Yeah,
am I saying at orientation?
sure.
Right? So, Mr. Mrs. New Caregiver, our goal is to answer every call live, but that's not going to be possible. Here's our policy, dot, dot, dot.
Yeah.
Right? If I tell them before, it's a reason. If I tell them after, it's an excuse.
Mm,
So, right? So that's just one KPI minor mistake that you can make big business decisions based without the actual numbers,
yeah,
anecdotal versus actual indicators.
yeah. I wonder to what extent, caregivers who call in that your office does not answer the phone, are they leaving a message? Are
Right.
they taking any of the follow-up steps that would allow
There you
them
go.
to get followed up with? Because I'm sure your team would love to return those calls, have that
Right.
conversation, but you know, uh, how do we set expectations so that caregivers do the right kinds of things that result in them getting the call back that they need, rather
Exactly.
than calling and not leaving a voicemail?
Right. And then it's just a matter of education after that. I
Yep,
already shared my education history, but that's what sales is.
yep,
That's what leadership is. It's just now we're going to educate. Look, like you said, Mr. and Mrs. Carrier, we don't want you to call and not get a live person either.
yep,
We're on the same page here.
yep.
But there's what's possible and what's isn't. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think that's really good. Okay, let's move now to a section. We talked about a lot of stuff that has gone wrong, and there's plenty of that to talk about. But what's something that's happened lately in your business that you're really proud of?
Right. We have what are called daily huddles. So with our entire team, it's a 10, 15-minute huddle. The format has evolved over the years. So we've always had a daily huddle.
Yeah,
But to your point, lately is what we've done is we've made it much more uh, oriented towards pressing those two buttons.
yeah,
All right. So how are we going to today? I'll give you an example. So not every morning huddle is the same, but we'll require everybody on the huddle maybe one morning to say, okay, what is your focus for today? What is the most important thing that you're going to be working on today? And inevitably that creates a discussion that everybody can learn from.
Yeah.
Right. Or we'll be like, okay, let's think about yesterday, everybody. What are you the most proud of that you accomplished yesterday?
Yeah.
And again, from one comment, man, you could have 10 minutes of talking time
Yep.
based on what they say. And here's the most beautiful part of it. You're not teaching. This isn't coming from the commander in chief.
Yeah.
This is a teaching lesson that's made from a contemporary for somebody else. And so
Yep.
people hear the boss say something and like, okay, but they're the boss.
Yep.
But when they hear somebody else that's on their team say that, that's much more powerful in many ways.
Mm. Yeah, I think that is so powerful is you get to, instead of being the person who's, leading from the front and trying to show everybody else like what to do. And there's always going to be times where you've got to set the tone and
Right.
you've got to, like, as the owner, you've got to take this much more seriously than anybody else because obviously. But I think one of the best leadership qualities that someone can have is the ability to shine a light on who in the organization is embodying the
Mhm.
culture and the values and all those sorts of things so that everybody else sees the kind of recognition that happens when you do those things. And so it sounds like, I mean, you guys have created an environment where every day organically there's an opportunity for individuals in your office to be held up as leaders and
Yep.
examples of what it's like to be a really valued member of this organization.
And that goes back to what you were saying about Zingage and about positive reinforcement, right? It's one and the same. I mean, you guys see that in the product that you created. So we're just enhancing that, outside of Zingage. Like, let's hold that person up. And then hopefully people will say, I want to be that guy. And they're not going
Yeah.
to think, I want to get that guy.
Right,
because
right.
because those aren't the people that you want on your team then.
Yeah. Well, sounds like you guys have done a lot to create a really great office culture, which is easier said than done within home care, as
Yeah.
stressful as it can be on
Oh,
certain
yeah.
days.
Absolutely. That can be challenging. But
Yeah,
you lead by example,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I'm curious, like, what's the relationship you think between your daily huddles that you're doing and the ability for your team to kind of ride the highs and lows of home care together?
Yeah, it's a therapy session,
Sure.
100%,
Yeah.
right? If somebody had it, you can't ignore. It's good sometimes if there is a negative comment. Like people are afraid, like, oh, what if I ask this question and it's
Yeah.
negative? Don't be afraid of that. You can leverage that into saying, yeah, I get it. Yeah, our hours are gonna go down. We're gonna have call outs. Yeah, that's
Yep.
annoying. Let's talk about this. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like, I had this caregiver do this. Yeah, now okay, so now you expect the expected. There are going to be call outs. There are going to be no call, no shows. Let's talk about it. What's under our control, what isn't. Let's allow this to make us better.
Yeah. That's great. Well, before we go today, what do you want to plug?
I would like to say that if there's anybody that's listening to this, of the millions, David, that listen to this
Millions.
podcast, I want to make sure that if there's any of my competitors in northern eastern Wisconsin listening, that they don't do anything I'm recommending today. Okay. Do the opposite, please.
Yeah. It's very, very specific, localized advice from
Yeah.
Matt Thompson here.
But in all seriousness though, the servant leader mentality, I think, is one thing I'd like to leave today. It's that a great leader serves. So you think of the CEO world, the corporate world that we live in, and you've got this pyramid, right? And you've got the CEO at the top, and then you've got everybody else beneath him. Well, you just turn that upside down, right? So really, I honestly view my job as I serve my office staff. I'm at the
Yeah.
bottom.
Yeah.
I serve the office staff so they can serve my caregivers, so they can serve my clients. My
Yeah.
clients are at the top. And I guess that would be the one philosophy that I would plug today.
Yeah. Well, I think that's threaded throughout here is really making sure that you're setting your team up for success, whether that's your caregivers or your office staff or whoever. I mean, it sounds like the key to your success has been making sure that the other folks in your organization do great work and feel good about the work that they do.
Right. That is, you want to have fun at work, man. Come
Yeah.
on. We
Yeah.
spend so much time at work. Why can't we have a little fun doing it?
I love it. I love it. Well, Matt, I had fun today. Thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate
I
it.
did too. I appreciate you inviting me, David.
On behalf of the team here at Zingage, thanks for listening to the show. We'll be back next week with another episode, so be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts on Spotify or Apple or YouTube. Leave us a rating while you're there, helps other people find the show. If you have comments on the show, drop me a line, david@zingage.com. Would love to hear from you, chat with you there.